Hello everyone, welcome to Beyond the Spectrum podcast, a show that is brought to you from Bloom Garden Schools, which is a leading institution for learning, research and therapy for persons with special needs. We take time to delve into it all and just understand what it all takes to bring up a child, to bring up an adult or a young adult for that effect with a special needs condition, and truly if there is indeed anything positive that can come out as a result of these interventions.
Mostly for any impairment, what is seen outside by the caregivers is the speech.
Autism, by the virtue that it is a spectrum, there are those kids who actually have the potential to actually communicate verbally, of course with a lot of interventions from maybe a speech therapist, the educators, people who they live with at home.
Hello everyone, welcome to Beyond the Spectrum podcast, a show that is brought to you from Bloom Garden Schools, which is a leading institution for learning, research and therapy for persons with special needs. We take time to delve into it all and just understand what it all takes to bring up a child, to bring up an adult or a young adult for that effect with a special needs condition, and truly if there is indeed anything positive that can come out as a result of these interventions. And now today I am so excited. I am joined by some awesome gentlemen here that it has been a pleasure to work with for the last few years. Karibuni sana. On my immediate left is Mr. Michael Mutunga, who is a special needs education consultant with so many years of experience, and we're actually glad to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you.
And on my right is Mr. Asaph Mwangi, who is a speech and language therapist, also with quite a number of years of experience. And I know you have been asking so many questions for those of you who've been following our previous episodes. And I know a majority of us are always concerned with speech plus education all put together, and what results can actually be achieved as a result of the same when we have some intervention in these two things being brought together. So I think it would be necessary to start from you, Mr. Asaph Mwangi, even as we build up on this discussion as we move on. Many parents would visit, and their topmost question, and particularly even as you go about these, the topmost question is always regarding speech. You know, I don't know, as in your experience as a speech and language therapist, what is always your first view or feedback when a parent comes in and tells you, I want my child to be able to speak? Because I don't know if you define speech in terms of just them being able to speak, or there's anything else you're able to build on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ronald. I'm glad to be here. When the clients come to me and they talk about speech, mostly for any impairment, what is seen outside by the caregivers is the speech. If there are some hidden disabilities, they see speech first. Yeah, if there are some cognitive issues, some behavioral issues, the speech is one which is seen. Because, in our society, it's like if a child is 2 years and not talking, even the visitors will ask you, hajawahi ongea? Ataongea lini? When will this boy talk? When will this girl talk? Yeah, why is he not talking? Because that's what it can be seen by the common man. So that is the most basic thing which we come across asking when this child will talk. But in our profession, what we define speech and language differently. Because we first talk about the communication. Because you can communicate without speech. True? Yeah. So now we have the communication, and this communication now we break it down. So how do I communicate? Do I communicate using words? Do I communicate using signs? Do I communicate using my body parts, which is body language? Or do I communicate using written language? Because all of them are way of the communication. Then from there now we break it down. If we have to communicate using words, which are spoken words, now we come now to speech and language. So you can see speech and language is quite about that level, because here we have the communication, we have different types of the communication, then now we have the spoken words. Yes. But the communication does not have to rely on the spoken words.
Yeah.
Yes. So now in the spoken word, that's where now we define the speech and language, which are totally different also. Because you could be having an issue with speech, but not the language. Okay? Or you could be having an issue with language and not the speech. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. I think that is well noted. Thank you so much for that intro bit of it all. Mwalimu, I know in your experience over all these years, many parents would come, and I think just allow me to ask you, you can a little bit narrow it down to autism for some minutes before we get into the other conditions as well. But think about autism and how many parents would be asking questions. And you, in your experience as a teacher, I don't know how you would handle that. You know, a parent comes to you as well. You're a teacher and you know how things ought to go, and there's a way you can take in that, and the parent wants you to, their main goal is speech, and you as a teacher in that position, I don't know how you take that.
Well, building on what Mr. Asaph has said, one thing that we always make clear right from the beginning is that the end goal is for the child in question to communicate, to learn to communicate. And of course it is usually a very tricky discussion to have within a parent, trying to push the parent towards accepting that speech, being able to communicate via speech and being able to communicate using gestures are actually functionally equivalent. That a child who is communicating or expressing his or her needs using maybe pictures or gestures or sign language is as good as the child who is expressing his or her needs using speech. So basically, in my case, I always try as much as possible to build this awareness in the part of the parent that after we do the initial processes, the initial procedures, after we take the child through an assessment, we will be able now to discuss and see what we need and how we need to empower this particular child so that they can actually be able to be, they can have a voice, they can be heard in whichever way. So there's a concept we used to learn in college. It would be called the concept of total communication, where the idea is, and it's a concept that is still valid even today. The idea is, I mean, what really matters is for you to be, as a person, to be understood by people within your community. If, for instance, I'm not able to communicate verbally, then in what other ways can I be empowered so that I can actually be heard? Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for that. Allow me to take you back. And this is to any of us who will be able to come in. Then is speech attainable as far as autism is concerned? Because you see, I love this discourse behind us trying to push for parents to really understand that yes, my child is able to communicate, my child is able to indicate that they're actually learning, and they're able to indicate language, vocabulary, and all this. But one of the most intriguing questions in the minds of our parents is it really possible for an autistic child to speak? And I don't know who would love to go first in that.
The simple answer is yes and no. Some may achieve speech.
Do you think that is based on severity or what exactly?
So many factors.
Okay.
I don't know. Some, even through our experience, may not achieve the verbal language, appropriate verbal language. And that's why we also use other alternative communication, or we do what we call, we augment what is there, we enhance what is there. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I like how Mr. Asaph is putting it. He says yes and no, which actually is a very practical way of looking at this issue and question.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, and answering the question from the context of learners and kids on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
We know autism, by the virtue that it is a spectrum, there are those kids who actually have the potential to actually communicate verbally, of course with a lot of interventions from maybe a speech therapist, the educators, people who they live with at home and all that. There's another on the other side of the spectrum, and especially kids who are on level 3. These are kids who may never actually get to a point of being able to express themselves verbally, but that does not mean that they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate. And that's now when it comes, that is where now the terminology non-speaking autism comes in. Where we talk about some kids being non-verbal. Which again now brings us back to what we were talking about just a minute ago.
Yes.
That it is very closely linked with what we call acceptance. Everybody who is with this child being able to look at the situation, know the nature of challenges the child has, and get to a point of accepting, and after accepting, choose what works with that particular child. And I think that's where now Mr. Asaph is bringing in a very important word, augment. Look for alternatives. And everybody is okay with, becomes okay and comfortable with those alternatives for the sake of the child.
Wow. Thanks for that. Another common question we get is, my child is able to sing. You play any musical tunes in the TV, they sing so lively and they're engaging, like that you can never convince that parent that their child is not speaking. So the parent, according to them, they are, why are you saying they're not speaking? And yet, when you play any Cocomelon songs, he will sing all that. But why is it that if I ask my child, how are you? They would never say, I am fine. So I don't know how we can put that into perspective, Mr. Mwangi.
Yeah, there's that singing, that my child can sing, but he cannot communicate.
Yes.
When we talk about the communication or talking, there's what we call the meaning of the words, the semantic part in the language. So you must know the meaning of these words, and you must have that joint interaction. But when you listen to the music, let me give you an example. I can sing along Ohangla, but do I know the meaning?
Absolutely not.
I can listen to a Spanish song right now, and I can sing it along after some few minutes, but do I know the meaning? And exactly that's what happened. Because the words sometimes don't make meaning. Yes, I've come across so many children who they are watching YouTube, Russian YouTube, and they can sing those songs. Yes. Very well, in fact, better than the Russians themselves. But they cannot be able to communicate because when talk about the communication component in the human being, there must be that intent, which most learners in the spectrum have impairment. There is that joint attention. See, there is that turn taking, which should be there, which is not there in the songs. Yes, and the research has shown that the part which deals with the singing songs is the memory. So for the song, you just need to memorize. Speaking is very spontaneous. Because I may be with you here, but I don't know what you're going to ask me in the next 5 minutes. But the song I've crammed, I crammed the national anthem when I was 4 years old. I can still sing it. By the time I was 3 years old, I didn't know the meaning of those words. But now I know the meanings of those words. You get it? Songs which we used to sing when we were younger, but we didn't understand the meaning. Yes.
Is it appropriate then for a parent to say that my child has speech in that scenario?
No, when you talk about the speeches, how appropriate do you produce sounds?
Okay.
And we use music in speech and language.
Yes.
True?
Very true.
And especially when it comes to articulation disorders. Because if I'm singing like the poo sound, and then I say pa 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 pa, you see, I'm still singing, but my focus is to articulate the sound poo.
Yeah.
Yes. So we are talking about here, you can sing. If you can sing along and you articulate the same word the way they are in the song, so mostly you have no speech issue.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
What you have is the language issue. Yes. Because you see, speech is how do you produce those sounds to make words. Language is how do you use those words to communicate. Okay. That is the basic difference between speech and sounds.
You cannot say that one segment is not dependent on the other.
Yes, I can communicate with speech disorders.
Yeah.
I can say food, then maybe I don't have sound. Foo is poo. So I can say I want food. Have I communicated? Yes. But with speech disorder. Also, instead of saying food, I've said food. But I've communicated. But with speech disorder. Yes. Someone may have the speech. If you ask him say food, he'll say. If you ask him say I want, he'll say. But spontaneously they won't communicate. But they are able to repeat any sounds which you are saying, any word which you are saying. And remember, our learners in the spectrum, there's what we call echolalia. And there are a big part of them who are very good with immediate echolalia and the past echolalia.
Yeah.
And if I'm very good with past echolalia, that means I'll also be able to sing those songs which I had, regardless of which language. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Michael, echolalia has just been mentioned. How does that affect what you do as a consultant in special needs for that effect? And are we able to predict that there would be some good progression or prognosis to that effect with intervention from Mr. Asaph Mwangi, who in this case is the speech and language therapist, and you as the special needs educator?
Well, very good question. And yes, echolalia really affects the work of a special needs teacher in this sense that it's one, you are not able to tell really if the child is understanding what you're teaching them, because whatever you say is mirrored back to you.
Yes.
If you tell the child take number one, they think the task is for them to say what you told them.
Yes.
So you tell them take now, show me number one, and they say show me number one. Then they look at you because they feel I've done the task anyway. You tell them let's go wash our hands. Maybe it's time for snack or maybe lunch or something. Then what they do is they say go wash your hands, and then the child will not act.
He's not doing anything.
They will not actually respond to those instructions because according to them the task is done, because they have an understanding that what I'm expecting to do is say what was said na tupumzike, hiyo maneno imfanye nini, hiyo maneno imeisha. So in that sense it becomes a bit challenging for you to actually now teach certain concepts, so to speak, unless and until you come up with a way to to help the child overcome or navigate that challenge. And that's where now the work of the speech therapist comes in, and that's where now the collaboration between the special needs teacher and the speech therapist comes in, so that now together mechanisms are devised and strategies are put in place so that now the child can be supported to overcome the echolalia, so that now learning can actually be enhanced. Yes.
Do you know the things people do out here to stop echolalia crazy?
Yes, they are.
Very crazy. I don't know if you would have a view on the same, because you know there are people who once you see, as you have given examples, let's go out, says let's go out. People who opt to beat them or punish them. Don't repeat what I've said. So I don't know what options we have. I know we might not go into a lot of it because it's a whole unit or entity on its own. But I don't know if there are any practical methods we can just for mention, because there are so many people out here I know who have kids in such like issues, whether it is immediate or as you said, a past one. I don't know what are always some of the strategies probably some parents out here that are watching us and listening to us and probably implement with regards to the same.
Yeah, what we should also know is that some of our learners in the spectrum, they do echolalia as a way of processing the information. And sometimes even ourselves, we also do that. We process. So you may be asked something, and then you rehearse it in your mentally, in your inner thoughts. Even during the examination, you may read a question, and then you try now to say it, to get it clear. So we should know when this child is doing that for the processing. We also should know when it's a delayed echolalia. Delayed echolalia is like, I watched some news, NTV news yesterday. So I come to school on Monday, and then I try to rehearse the whole news bulletin. You see. Then there is now what we call the immediate echolalia. And this one, there's two types. So there's how are you? Then I won't respond. But now there's one, we will say, how are you? Fine. So I echo and I also give you the answer. So and all of them, they have different treatment. The delayed one need more of a behavioral approach. You see. And also this one which is immediate, sometimes the highest level of language is the question words. Who, what, how, when, why, which. And most of our learners, they don't understand the meaning of those words. So I'll ask him, how was school? And then he'll just say, how was school? Maybe not because he was too echo, is that he does not understand that question word, how. But sometimes we train them on the meaning of those question words, and the echolalia reduce. If it does not, then we have what we call the intonation. So how are you? Fine. So now he knows that the word which have raised the voice is the one to. Yes. The one who are in higher cognitive, we ask them, don't repeat that. No repeating. Because they are able to understand, no repeating. Yes.
So is there hope that echolalia can actually end?
We have done it at Bloom, so there's hope. Yes. There's always something which we can do to help them. So we cannot sit back and say, even if we reduce it to 50%, to me it's a good job. So there's always something which we can do. And remember, from what I've given you the thing, is each and every child is individual. Yes. And there's a reason why they are echoing. So once you know why they are echoing, their type of echoing, then you can be able to work. But it also needs multidisciplinary. Because it's across at home, school, everywhere. Yes.
If there's something that most parents are always really concerned about when it comes to speech is time vis-a-vis result. Most people would want things to come out as fast as it can actually come. So I don't know what you have to say regarding the progression, particularly with intervention and how the response comes with speech. Mr. Michael.
Yes, basically it's the hope of every parent that once their kids begin the journey of speech therapy and other interventions that are meant to enhance speech, acquisition of speech, development of communication skills, it is the hope of every parent that this will happen and will come as fast as possible. It is actually every parents, even parents of neurotypical kids, they hope that once the kids perhaps go to school, they're going to learn as fast as possible.
Yeah.
That's very normal.
Yes.
That's very normal. But there are things that cannot be rushed. And especially things to do with human development and child development, they cannot be rushed. I remember a time when we used to say, and I'm sure that still it is very valid and it still holds a lot of weight, that there's crawling and creeping.
Yeah.
So crawling, creeping. So they creep and then they crawl.
Yes.
Is that true? That progression. Then standing before walking. But unless now a child learns maybe to stand maybe by holding on something like a table, you really should not expect the child to walk, because development happens in a certain progression.
The sequence.
And you cannot rush it. So there has to be that patience, so that as the teacher and as the therapist are doing their part, we give the process time, because it has to follow the natural the natural process has to be followed. Which also now again brings me back to the question you're asking. I remember a time when now I was dealing with this parent who was telling me, all I want to see is my child learning one new word every day.
Okay.
And that's not practical. Really, it's not practical, because that is not how it works. It is not a mathematical thing. It is actually a very complicated process, because the brain is involved, speech organs are involved, the child's internal, the ability of the child is involved, so many things. So there is actually an intersection of so many factors that will influence how fast this skill will develop. But now the overarching factor is the quality of intervention. So what we normally tell parents is, with quality, proper evidence-based interventions from every team member, from the speech therapist, from the teacher, from you at home, when everybody works towards achieving the same targets and the same goals, there definitely shall be progress, because good interventions lead to good results. Without giving a parent hopes, because it will be a bit unethical for me to predict and say this child will speak after 2 years. It is very unethical. That is always a very common question. That's actually very unethical. Or for me to sit and say, who you are, very unethical to predict. So we are not in control of that. In a way we are, but to a large degree we are not. So what we're in control of is what actually we should focus on, providing good interventions. You see, when we provide good interventions based on the ability and the level of that particular child, we'll definitely see that progression that we want to see. As far as time is concerned, we can't tell. We can't tell.
That's always a big deal.
Yes, it is. It is.
So if you find someone who tells you your child will speak after 3 months,
no, that's unethical conduct. That is unethical conduct, friend.
Well, that's how you have a different opinion towards that.
It's true, because they also come and ask me, when will my child talk? You see, because there is also the transaction involvement, because they have to pay. So there's also that cost implication. And whenever there's a cost implication and the treatment, any client or any patient will ask, when will I be okay? When will my child be okay? When I will. So that's a common. So it depends on how you answer. So any treatment, even in any diseases, there's no doctor who can tell you that we are giving you this medicine and you are sure that you'll be okay. So you are given and then we observe. We just do our best. We do therapy techniques. We do our intervention, as what Mr. Michael has said. And then see.
Yeah, I think it's important for our viewers to just understand that, yes, it is true that sometimes most of our interventions are actually evidence-based and very scientific and research-based. But particularly with most of some of these conditions, many a times you cannot really define that this is how the progression will be or the results would be. I mean, we can have, we call them plans that are directed towards one direction. Some kids are able to respond way better than others with the intervention being given. Yes, there is science that supports that this might be the way to go. But in areas like speech, many a times you might not be able to like give time frames, as we say, like give definitely, like your child is going to speak in 2 months. That is quite gross. But the fact that a speech therapist and a teacher who understands your kids will be able to tell you that this is where we are going, and there are possibilities that if we work on this and this, you're able to get here. Tell me about screen time, because that is quite something in this generation and time. You know, we are all about technology, and you can get in a home. I have a TV, I have a laptop, I have another computer, my child has a phone, a tab, and all those things, and they have access to that. Do you think these things are affecting our speech and language development today?
Yeah, it's a complex question because of the research has been found is if there is some impeding, if there is some predisposing factor. Because if we say that gadgets affect all children, so we could be having all urban kids with speech and language delayed. But it's true. It affects in a certain degree, especially in the formative years. You know, from once you are born to about 4 years, you need that human interaction to acquire language, to read the body language, to respond, to take turns. That is the formative years. But now this what happened. If a child had some predisposing factors, are they exposed to the gadget, the difficulty is compounded. Yes. Because you go to a home and get the siblings, both of them, they were watching TV at the same time, but one has speech and language disorder and the other one is okay. So how do you now explain to the parent that you expose them to the TV? But she'll say, or he'll say, but they were twins, but this one, yes. So there's always what we call predisposing factors. Just like we can go and we take tea somewhere. I got a stomachache and you're okay. Maybe I have some predisposing factor. But all what we know that the formative years, you don't need to have your children. The screen time should be 0. Yeah, especially between 0 to 5 years. Let it be 0, because those are the formative years. And you can see other countries now, they are even banning the social media. Like, is it Australia? Yes, it has banned. Yes, below 16 years, no social media. So, and you see, after COVID, we have seen the doctors, the neurologists, coming up with this kind of a child has virtual autism. So this virtual autism is actually something today. Yes, virtual autism means that even if there was something small, it was compounded by the screen. That's why it's called now virtual autism. And this one, we have been seeing it especially during the COVID and after the COVID. Well, during the COVID time, people were fully screen. Yes, were fully screen. Yes. So to me, I would say yes, it has some effect. Yes, and it has more effect if a child has some predisposing factors. Yes.
Do you have something to add on that?
Yes, I do. Screen time, definitely, like Mr. Asaph is saying, is something that really needs to be regulated. So for infants and toddlers, because the effects are definitely not that good. because one thing to know about, to note about a screen is that number one, it is very entertaining. Number two, it can be very addictive. Number three, it can be more interesting and exciting than connecting with a nanny or a caregiver, or maybe playing with other kids outside. So in the end, you expose your child to this thing that is actually keeping them very busy, very entertained, and all that, but it places zero social demands on that child. It also places zero demands for communication on that child. So in the end, you find at that particular point, that age that Mr. Asaph is talking about, 1 to 5 years, that is the time when the brain actually is developing actively.
Yes.
And it is also a duration when so much learning takes place, and a lot of neural connections are happening. So suppose now, instead of too much exposure to screen time, you expose this child to experiences that will build them socially, will boost their language skills, motor abilities, and all that. So in certain other scenarios, people are always encouraged at that particular point, expose kids to more outdoor activities, more social activities, more activities that lead to motor development than these passive activities that actually can hinder development in other domains. But again, we've had scenarios where some parents tell us, well, my child learned the few words he or she has from the screen. Yes, that's a pro.
Yeah.
We've also seen certain other scenarios where parents tell us, because my child, especially now with the COVID situation, because my child was so much indoors, he lost the little interest he had in other kids and in other people. Yeah, so in the end, what should happen is the regulation aspect.
Yes.
Because again, behavioral scientists also say, at the end of the day, a device, maybe a tablet or something, exposure to such things, of course, with moderation, helps in self-regulation. And especially, let's say, a child has gone through a whole day at school. There's so much that they took in. At the end of the day, they need to be in that space where they can actually ease all this tension. And some people actually say a bit of it, a bit of screen time helps in the area of emotional regulation. But again, when it's too much of it and there is no moderation, it usually has detrimental effects. Hence now again, like Mr. Asaph is saying, where we are hearing of some doctors talking about the virtual autism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for those insights. I believe this is going to be a conversation you're going to continue building, because many times we cannot fail to speak about autism and speech delays in one kind of umbrella. So we'll continue building on this discussion even as we keep on moving on in our future podcast that most likely will be live and be able to take even questions from parents and respond to that even as we keep on with these kinds of interactive sessions. And last opportunity to all of us, what would be your encouragement from a teacher point of view and a speech and language therapist point of view to parents who have children with special needs and particularly with speech and language delays, as far as reaching out to intervention is actually concerned? What would be your encouragement to them, and what is that one word that you would give to that parent who at the moment feels like hopeless and feels like nothing is actually working out, whether it's education or speech and language therapy? I don't know how you would, what is that one word that you would give to them? Could start from Mr. Mwangi.
Yes. The one work for speech and language therapists is advocacy.
Yeah.
To demystify the myth.
Yeah.
So, dear parents, speech language therapy works, but it's always good to listen to the speech language therapist, to the type of the treatment which you have to embark, and also whether to embrace other types of communication. So we also don't have to rely on the speech, on the verbal words. We can also try to communicate using other means of communication. With the guidance from a trained speech therapists, you are in safe hands. Don't shy away. We know that Kenya, before we were so few, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. In the next 5 years, we'll have many speech therapists in Kenya.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Asaph, for that. There is hope, our viewers. There is hope, our parents, for speech and language therapy. They can't put it better than how he's actually put it, Mr. Michael.
So for me, the one thing I'd like to tell parents is that they need to be part of the intervention team. They need to be involved. They need to be hands-on parents. They need to understand that as you talk about stakeholders involved in supporting the child, a parent is very, 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 very important. And they should actually work in tandem with the speech therapist. They should work in tandem with the teacher. They should actually see what role they can play to make the work of the teacher and the speech therapist easier. Because at the end of the day, that actually has a direct benefit on the child. Is it resources? They should actually ensure that those people have the resources they need. If there's something, if there's an activity the parent can actually do, interventions need not be concentrated within the school environment only. It is very important for those interventions to be actually taken to the natural environment, and that is actually the home environment. There are many times when we feel, or parents feel like, hiyo ni ya shule. The school, the therapist will do that, the teacher will do that, the other person will play their part. But now when the child goes home, the environment is completely unstructured, and there are little demands that are being placed within the home environment. And the overall implication is a child who cannot generalize. So they pick skills from the therapist or the people they are working with, but when they go home, they don't use that. So there's that lack of generalization. And at the end of the day, all the things we are doing are meant to help the child to function properly in the natural environment, not only in the school, because school becomes a safe environment, but now outside school, in the community, that is where all this should be practiced. Hence, the need for the therapist to, not the therapist, the parent to know what they are doing. In school, what the therapist is doing, so that it can actually be applied in a meaningful way.
Awesome. Wow. And thank you so much, gentlemen. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you. I hope and believe our viewers, you have benefited something from this particular episode. And if you have been able to observe, today we are coming to you live from a different location. This is actually our Bloom Garden Vocational Training Center. And I know many times it is said that the earlier the better, but in case you haven't been able to come through in terms of intervention for your child, as far as the care for either autism or special needs is concerned, we still say it's never too late. There's always something that can be done, and your child is able to live a more fulfilling life. So feel free to visit our centers. One of the things and the most beautiful thing about our centers is we are a full house full of everything we speak, and if I would use the word, we preach. And therefore you'll be able to get the necessary care you will require when it comes to intervention, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, special needs education, and all those things that you'd love your child to be able to achieve, of course, with clear and the necessary guidance that is required. So feel free to visit our Bloom Garden Vocational Training Center. We are located in Nyeri Road, in Kileleshwa. So feel free to pass by, ask any question, and without a doubt, you'll be able to get the necessary help that you require. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment, because that is going to inspire our next episode. Thank you.